Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
We are with some of my favorite people. Honestly, this time of year is one of my favorite times of year when we do podcasts with Pietze and Jonny, because our lives are all so crazy that we don't normally hang out, the four of us, over Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not a typical thing of hanging out. Like, let's just all have a Zoom date.
Why not?
We should.
We should.
I agree.
We definitely should. But why not is because it's hard to schedule.
100%. It takes us forever to schedule these freaking podcasts.
It does. It takes us a long time to do this. But it's so much fun at this time of year. You know, Pathway to Freedom is out, and it's a course that we all did together that transformed all of our lives. So then when it's the season of like, you have to sign up now, it's basically you're about to be out of time. This is your last chance for an entire year to do this course.
Yeah.
We get to talk to Pietze and Jonny to talk through all of the things that we've learned, and it just feels kind of homey.
Yeah.
It does. And we're inviting a ton of people into the conversation with it. Like they get to be in on the hangout.
Yeah, they get to be in the
fun.
hangout. And actually, me and Pietze's hangouts is kind of what inspired the theme of this podcast for me.
Yes.
Today.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of talk about the journey of transformation, of personal transformation, because I think it's sometimes helpful when you're on your own process to hear people talk about what the process is like, so that you realize I'm not alone. I am actually doing the work. It will actually get somewhere. It is actually worth it. Sometimes it's that thing that is so important to keep our souls encouraged while we go through the process of transformation. And me and Pietze, she's one of I think we're both part of the reasons that we have been able to stay on the transformation process.
Yes.
It's because we have someone else who understands the cost of the transformation process and understands who we are and can notice and see the changes that are happening within us.
Yeah.
So I thought we should just probably have this conversation so everybody can hear what it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
I want to start off with saying, I know that when it comes to tackling the issues of the heart and stuff, it's one of the things where you'll experience the most resistance in people's lives. It's like everybody is running as fast as possible from change and growth and development, because it can feel so excruciating. In fact, people will get deep into, say, one of our courses, and they'll be like, I'm melting down. What's happening to me? I didn't know it'd be so painful. But there's this illusion that it costs us more to engage the process than it does to
stay the same.
To stay the same. And that's a big part of this conversation that we're going to get into.
Yeah. I mean, I think most of us live in a normalized state of pain.
Right.
Where
normalized is a good way to put it.
We have torment that we're used to. Oh, I'm just used to having anxiety all the time. Like I remember this is a great example. Courtney, who's one of our master consultants, she was one of my clients years ago. And I remember going to her and being like, I think you have a lot of anxiety. Like, I think like anxiety runs your life. And she's like, really? I don't think so. I don't know. And she like had zero grit that she had anxiety that ran her life. And now she could look back and be like, I was anxious every day.
Stress ball.
At every moment. There was never a time that I wasn't anxious, but she was always anxious. So she didn't know that there was a different way to live. And it was her normalized pain, her normalized experience of always, it manifested in her body. It manifested in her emotions. It manifested in her reactions to everything. And it wasn't until she did our life consulting masterclass, which we have every year, once a year, that we gave homework that helped her start to see just how often she was having anxiety.
Yeah.
And then she started to realize, oh my gosh, this is consuming my life. and then got tools to get out of anxiety. And then the more she experienced being anxiety free, the more she could contrast and be like, oh, I just had a night where I didn't have anxiety. And now I realize my whole life has been anxiety. And this is kind of the process of freedom, is you start to taste in, like, first you have the initial pain of facing the reality of what your life has been.
Yes.
Which is, she all of a sudden realized, I have anxiety everywhere. It's everywhere. And that pain is where most people feel panic. Oh no, there's this huge thing that I have to face to overcome. And it's never as huge as we think, but when we open our eyes, it can feel overwhelming for a little bit when we've been closing them. And then what happens is then eventually you have a moment where you feel safe, or you feel regulated, or you feel connected to yourself. And that moment starts to revolutionize you, because you start to realize there's something better for your life.
The parallel I'll draw to this is the Matrix and the whole red pill scenario. Love it. Guys are all ears right now. The Matrix, what? It's about dodging bullets.
Finally, a part I can listen to in this.
But it's the minute you start getting red pilled, because everyone is living at this constant normal, right? Like in Neo's world, it was, I am living at this normal. Everyone else is functioning this way. This is just how it is.
Right.
And you take the red pill and you go, oh, it's not just how it is. And at first it's super disorienting. You're like, oh my God, what was I living under? How do I get past this? And so like that anxiety hits, and you watch Neo's journey of accepting like, oh, the world I was living in wasn't actually truth. It was an illusion. An illusion of truth. And now that I am in truth, now I get to actually be powerful and control how I show up to this entire other world. Like that, there's this empowerment quest that he goes through inside of it. But the initial portion is so jarring, because every truth inside of you begins to be challenged. Like part of the price of freedom is that every truth or reality that we've held onto to keep us in surviving, not thriving, all of a sudden gets exposed. And we go, what ground do I stand on? How do I, this is all of
those were the pillars that kept us up.
Those are our pillars. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because we often feel scared to let go of familiar pillars, even if they're not comforting.
Correct.
Even if they're not life-giving. So like Courtney, the idea of letting go of anxiety and hypervigilance felt scary and overwhelming.
Absolutely terrifying.
You know, for me, the idea of not living in depression or shame spirals, despairs, like that felt, because almost it's like our torment becomes comfort to us.
Yes.
Because we know
it's the way we relate to the world. It's how we've learned through our wiring, through synapses in our brain. That's how we move through the world. I use anxiety and hypervigilance to move through the world. I use avoidance and depression to move through the world. And so when we start to poke holes in that, there can be this moment of almost like, I don't know who I am, and I don't know how to move through the world anymore. I don't know how to relate to the world anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and even to kind of piggyback on what you guys were saying earlier, it's funny because when I have clients who are in resistance to going on the journey, and I can tell that they're in resistance, they're scared. Usually I'll just say, okay, what are you scared of? Like, let's just talk about it. What are you scared of? And they're like, okay, I'm scared that I'm just going to feel miserable. I'm scared that I'm going to be so overwhelmed that I'm not going to know what to do. And I'm like, you know, they just start listing all these things. And a lot of times, exactly what they're describing that they're scared of is the hell that they're living in right now.
Yes.
So then a lot of times I'll come in and say, oh, okay, so you're scared of experiencing the emotions that you currently live in every day.
Yes.
That's what you're scared of. And they're like, oh, you know, but I mean, I do get it, because it can feel. Well,
here's the thing. You're like, I can't experience more of those.
Yeah, exactly. You're like
I'm already
I can't
at my
actually
limit.
do that. Yeah, exactly. Because you're like, I can't actually do it. And I'm like, hey, how about we actually face it and look at it? And it's going to be painful to look at it for a minute.
Yeah.
but it's for the sake of taking this thing out so you don't have to live like that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's what,
Well, and I think that one of the things that goes even a step past that is I think oftentimes we have so deeply identified with our pain and our trauma that it has actually been taken on as an identity statement about who we are. Like I know for me, I had so fully taken on the identity of I'm going to lay down my life for my family and I'm going to work hard because that's all I know. That's all I know how to do. It's a trauma response. I can't figure out how to make my wife feel loved by me. I can't figure out how to make our connection good, but I can provide and I can essentially martyr myself for this family. And then that so deeply became part of my identity that part of the cost of going on the journey was being willing to let go of something that I had taken on as who I am.
right. And I love what you're saying because this is the truth of transformation is there is a letting go of who you've been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you begin to depart from who you've been before you're fully who you're becoming yet.
Yes.
Yes.
And that process of the in-between can feel really scary. It's,
Really
I mean,
scary.
honestly, the caterpillar feels like the best example. I know it's overused, but it's probably because everybody understands it's the right example, which is you're a caterpillar and then you're transforming out of being a caterpillar and you're just mush in the cocoon. Like you just become mush.
Yeah, like a caterpillar has to completely like dissolve itself in order to be transformed. Like in that cocoon, it's like just goo.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. How does it turn into goo and then completely reorganize itself into a butterfly?
Totally.
I don't know.
It's a crazy scenario, but that's what transformation is like.
Which, by the way, in that process as well, they're deeply unprotected. It's not like they have eyes to the outer world to even know what could hurt. Like all of a sudden, it is an incredibly vulnerable state to be in something like that.
Although you do get your cocoon sometimes to help you.
Yeah, you got the cocoon, but you don't know what's outside.
But you don't know if like a kid is going to come by and whack you off with a stick. You have no control over that.
And I also would say when you're in the mush state, you don't know what you're going to become.
Yeah.
And when you're in the mush state, I think the lie is often that you're not going to become anything.
Yeah,
the
and I'll
mush
be this
state
way
is-
forever.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this is why I think it's really important. And I have clients tell me this all the time. Like, I'm so thankful to be meeting with you because I feel so overwhelmed. And it's the same with people who have done pathways and who have done LCMC because it can feel so scary and overwhelming when you're in the middle of it. Cause you're like, am I going to stay like this forever? Am I okay?
Yes.
And I feel like I end every session with a client, or even when we're doing Pathway to Freedom and we're doing the immersion program, it's like we end everyone with an encouragement of being like, you're on the right track. If you feel overwhelmed, it's going to be okay. This is part of the process.
This is
Keep
normal.
going. Trust the process. It's okay.
Every time I'm on one of those calls or even with clients myself, I literally have to be like, okay, let me talk to you about an area where I fell short this last week.
Yes.
Let me talk to you. Because there's this feeling of we have to be perfect and it can't be a journey.
Yeah. And this journey is messy. You do turn into goo. And I remember telling Jonny when we were in the process of cleaning up our marriage and it felt like a deep cleaning. I just got this picture in my head. I'm like, this feels like we've had this really messy kitchen for years. And we just kept shoving stuff in the cabinets and trying to close it. And we were functioning, right?
Yeah.
But like every time we'd open up a cabinet, like 20 things fell out because there was so much being pushed into these cabinets. And when we started really doing a deep dive, which by the way, we talk about that entire process like 2 years ago in the summer. So if you want to listen to this podcast, you can. But you know, when we started really taking a deep dive and undoing it, it felt like we were going in and God was going in with us and opening up all the cabinets and taking out all the stuff. And, you know, there's this moment, if you've ever deep cleaned a house and you start taking everything out, there's this moment of panic almost when you start taking everything out and you're like, I feel so overwhelmed and oh crap, what did I do?
How will we ever clean this up now? Now it's too much for me to figure out.
And now I see the mess. So what do I do with it, you know? And at times it almost felt like I'm like, okay, we're doing pretty good. We're putting things back. And then it'd like you open up another cabinet and stuff comes and you're like, okay, great. But on the other side of that, and here's the thing, one thing that I love about the four of us specifically, and I feel like everyone in our world, is that we own our messiness.
Yeah.
We're not here to say, oh, hey, we've got this perfectly figured out. We're like, no, we're messy and we are on the pathway to freedom, just like you. And we're committed, like we're on this and we're messy while we're doing it. We're still in process. You know, like I'm still in process. The things I'm teaching, I'm still getting deeper. I'm still learning. I'm still getting into my life and my subconscious and transformation. But I will say on the other side of really that deep cleaning process, and there's still cabinets that we open and mess comes out, but on the other side of it, I'm like, man, how did we function with that messy kitchen before?
Yeah.
How did we even make it as long? How did we function? How did we do it? Because now it's like, oh, this is what a kitchen is supposed to be. This is what a relationship is. This is how I'm supposed to feel. This is actually who I am. This is what I was made for.
Yes.
You know?
Well, and the relief of recognizing that there is a whole new way to live. And the process, if you want radical transformation, it doesn't happen in a month.
No.
Like you
and that's
start
what people...
like the pathway to freedom, me and Pietze started that concept and years ago and then recorded it. And we are still seeing it play out in transforming our lives. Now, the transformation has been remarkable. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not like, I mean, I would have felt thankful after year 1 of it or year 2 of it.
Yes.
But like, I'm still seeing there's still more and more of my life that is being transformed by it. And so there is this thing of being able to be willing to take time. And I think when I was younger, I wanted everything to be instant.
Yeah.
I wanted instant relief from my pain. I wanted instantly to be out of all of the beliefs. And now I recognize it would feel really unsafe to your nervous system to be able to instantly change all of your belief systems all at once. Like you actually need the time and transformation process to be able to create new beliefs that can stabilize your life.
Yes.
You know, it's not just about changing beliefs and growing in that way. It's also about the relationships that are built along the way. This is about, we were designed in and through and for relationship. That is our heart design. And these processes that we go through aren't just an invitation to get our shit together.
Yeah.
Right? It's an invitation to intimacy, to not only knowing my own heart and the person in the mirror, but it's to knowing the people around me and them knowing me. It's about these experiences where I acknowledge I'm broken and I'm messy and I don't have it all together, where I yield in humility to the relationships around me and create invitations for people to step in. And it's when people step into the midst of our messiness, that's where all of a sudden the bonds happen and the love gets in. This is where we begin to have revelations of love through the relationships that we begin to forge through our vulnerability and our intimacy inside of these processes.
Yeah.
And the reason that these processes are one of the keys that make them so terrifying is that one of the necessary requirements is the vulnerability inside of relational exchanges to actually make the transformation and the impact lasting.
Yeah.
So yeah, because you start to have to show yourself undone. Like,
correct.
You have to show that you're not finished, that you're not perfect, that you aren't. But that is where, like, if you're never being in that vulnerable, authentic place, you're also never being healed and met by love.
Exactly.
You're just performing, or you're putting on a facade, or you're putting on
behavior
an act.
modifications.
Yeah. So when I call Pietze and I'm like, Pietze, I got so dysregulated again. And I went into blame again, or I went into panic again, or whatever it is. And I share the thing that I feel so much shame about. And she's like, yeah, I get it.
Me too.
I'm working through that. Yes. It's so hard when those things come up, but it makes so much sense that exchange of being known in the middle of the process
Yes.
And being loved there
Yeah.
is what is so powerful. That's why people love our immersion courses. That's why they impact people so profoundly, because for the first time they're in a group where you're not only allowed to be messy, you're celebrated when you're messy.
Yeah.
And you
and
are
celebrated
cheered on.
when you step out vulnerably. Like
Yep.
you have such support. I'm always so moved by this.
Mhm.
Literally, I think I cry like every time we
Yes.
do an immersion class because of the community.
Yeah.
Because of the love and the support. Like when someone risks it and they're vulnerable in front of the class, like everybody rallies
Mhm.
and like loves on them. And like
Mhm.
it ends up creating more healing where the person is like
Mhm.
then undone by the love that they're getting in that vulnerable space. And I'm like, I have never seen this before ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a powerful, like it is a transformative, powerful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
You know?
people meet their best friends and their spouses and their because it's such a safe place to be able to be you, and it's so
Yeah.
easy to find people that are wanting to be like you. And I'd say that's one of the most important parts of a transformation process. I would not make it through this transformation process if it wasn't for Justin and Pietze and Jonny, because
Yeah.
regularly Justin will be like, no, I can see progress. You are
Yeah.
Yeah.
transforming. Like when I have so much like I've been working through PTSD, which is panic.
Yeah.
So when I have a wave of panic come up and it feels like it is flooding me and overwhelming me, and I feel right back to where I was at the beginning of this journey, I have Justin to be like, you're going into panic less though. You know that you are having better
Yeah.
skills. You're learning how to regulate. You're learning how to take care of your body more. Do you know that you've blamed me less in this panic than you used to?
Yeah.
And all of those things. So I have somebody who's like, yes, a wave has hit you and it's reminding you of where you've been. But that's not actually the context of where you're at. You're moving through this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I look about at the journey of transformation, we talk about it as transformation, but really it's it's about us being restored to the truth of our being. And this is such a great line that Paul Young uses as he talks about becoming aware of the truth of our being, the truth of how loved we are, the truth of that we are peace and we are humility. And these are part of our nature. And it's all buried under these external lies and self-protectors and the judgments that we've collected along the way. But it's actually a restoration process. It's a restoration to our original design, the original intent for our life. And I just wanted to point that out because it's not like you're trying to, make yourself into something. It's about returning to something that was always there that we veered away from as innocent children. In our innocence, when we are connected to love, we're over here, connected to parts of the truth of our being. And then as judgment and punishment, and shame enters in and self-hatred enters in, it starts skewing the reality of our identity. It's all of a sudden the world is like this funhouse mirror, when you're in fun houses.
Yes.
And all of a sudden it's giving a skewed perspective of who we are. And that's where the torment happens, is when the accusation, the skewed torment of who we are continues to bombard us daily. And so part of this is ironing out the vision for who we truly are in the process. And there is something so peace-giving as you realize, oh, I am just coming back to who I truly am.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. I feel like so much of my process has been that. Like I look back and I think about how I used to move through the world and how I used to operate in relationships. And so much of my life has been lived in self-protection. And out of that self-protection, I didn't know how to get my needs met in a vulnerable way because I was compensating for beliefs and lies about myself, like deficiency stories inside of myself.
So good.
Where I actually had, I believe this deficiency inside of myself. So my life is then trying to prove to myself and other people that doesn't exist. Well, how do you have to do that? Well, you can't use vulnerability because you have to use self-protection. So for me, that came through my fight response. It came through overwhelming emotions, it came through
Mm-hmm.
blame and accusation and dysregulation.
So that's how you would try to get, like with Jonny, you'd try to get your needs met through overwhelm, blame, accusation, control, big emotional outbursts.
Yeah, for all the things. And I mean, like Jonny's been incredibly humble on the podcast, but for all the things that he's done, I was also back there doing things that would have completely shut him down
Mm-hmm.
and made him want to disattach from the relationship because I wasn't a safe person because I wasn't safe inside of myself.
Totally.
You know? And so then like what that behavior would look like practically is like, okay, I would get upset and I would go, I didn't know how to get my needs met. So I'd go into blame and accusation, into a fight response.
Yep.
Then I would feel shame about the dysregulation and what I did in dysregulation. But because I don't know how to be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't know how to tap into the humility it takes to go, oh, I'm a messy human and I'm really sorry. Then I have to double down. And I have to go even more. I have to double down on what I'm doing and blame even more.
Yeah.
You know, and I look back and I mean, now it's just it really was a transforming thing of even as I've begun to accept that about myself, accept that I've been like that. It's been one of the most freeing things for me. Because I think I'm realizing on the other side of this, I'm like, oh, that's not who I am. That's who I became in survival.
Yes.
And that's who I am actually is really loving, really kind, really like not victim-y, like rises to the occasion of relationship in a safe way.
Yeah.
Like, and I like this person. I like this person. Like, this is who I thought I was, but I was delusional.
Totally. Yep. Yeah.
But that humility piece is so painful. It's what we were talking about at the beginning when Abby and I call each other and are like, yeah, I lost it again. And I was really dysregulated. And, you know, having Abby or we can tell each other like, hey, I get it. I've so been there and you are making a lot of growth. But I've realized that humility piece, it can feel so, it's you're risking it. It's bravery because what you're doing is you're saying no to shame.
Yeah.
By choosing into humility. And that's brave because shame becomes a protector in our life to protect, you know, what we're guarding of who we think we are. And that bravery of like choosing to be humble and go, yep, I fully accept that this is how I've acted and this is who I've been has created so much safety.
Yep.
Like it literally has created a safety blanket around me in my process. You know, and I look at the process now and I'm like, wow, I can't imagine not having gone on this process because I didn't know who I was. I spent most of my life throwing punches underwater.
Yeah.
I spent most of my life just trying to survive life, you know, as a person that I really wasn't. And I was destroying my marriage. I think the trajectory of my relationships with my kids would have been completely different.
Totally.
You know?
When you're talking about blame and accusation, they are such deep protectors of shame. And it's so easy for people to go like, I will hunker down and create blame and accusation because as long as I am blaming and accusing someone else of being the problem, because again, that's either I'm evil or you're evil concept is so inside of that. And so I don't want to be seen as evil. I don't want to be seen as bad. I don't want to have to go into any ownership for what the role I've played. I am just wanting to blame so I don't have to feel the sting of shame. So I'm going to protect myself from shame right now by blaming and accusing. And the power of what you're talking about, like ownership, like the cost of freedom is inside of ownership. Like if I want freedom, I have to figure out how to own, because the minute I begin to take ownership for how I'm showing up or participating in life is where I get to shatter the shame that's inside of my story that keeps me living small and inadequate and insecure.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I meet with several men who struggle with porn and different stuff like that. And I always tell them, I'm like, you know what you should do if you ever get the chance? Go on a podcast and talk about it in front of thousands and thousands of people because it's incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
Not that they have that opportunity, but I'm just saying the feeling of like, no, I have nothing to hide here. Yeah. I have absolutely nothing to hide. And I think In the context of marriage, oftentimes one of the stuck points, and when I say stuck, I mean like legitimately stuck, like a lot of people don't ever get past this point, is if I humbly come in and say, look, it's real. Like, let's just be real about this. I'm kind of a dick sometimes. I'm sorry. Like, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, you communicate your emotions and I leave the building.
Yeah.
Either in reality or emotionally.
Yep.
Right. And it's real. If we actually own our stuff in a really humble, really real way, the stuck point is the belief that is admitting a form of guilt that puts a conclusion to all of our marriage problems.
Yes.
Right. That is a court of law and the jury has spoken and I am the guilty one.
Yes.
Right. And that's a really scary feeling when you feel like there's not going to be a reciprocation of, hey, there's pain that you have as well.
Yeah.
Right. But I feel like a lot of times we get into emotional chicken where we're like, okay, who's going to crack first here?
Totally.
And whoever cracks first is the villain in the story. And we're both so scared of being the villain that neither one of us want to go there.
Yep.
But humble ownership and just coming in. I make my couples do this all the time. And it sounds so simple, but I'm like, hey, do you see that that's real? Like, just pause. Don't give me a defensive answer for 2 seconds. Do you just say that you did that? You punched the wall and that scared her. Can we just admit?
Acknowledge that.
Rather than why you got there or, like those kind of things. It's real. It's okay that it's real.
Yeah.
In fact, saying that it's real is going to alleviate your own internal
shame,
chaos and shame in the midst of all of it,
Well, and that's what I love about doing pathways, because it creates this common language and common value that there are no villains and that we can all actually go on the journey and embrace our messiness.
Yeah.
And actually work through it together. So there becomes almost a camaraderie, a partnership, within relationship when you're doing it together.
Yeah.
I remember. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say we always recommend couples or families.
Yes.
Or friend groups do it together because the common language, one of the things that I love about the culture we've created is we do believe being human is messy.
Yes.
We shout it from the rooftops because me and Justin are still messy. Like we're still working through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are. We're perfect, but
we've
like,
arrived at perfection, but
I feel really proud of how much we've worked through. Like most people think to say that they're still working through stuff means that none of the work they've done before that matters.
Yes.
I don't feel that way. I feel like it's miraculous how much we've worked through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of crazy things we've had to work through. And so there's still stuff. But we have a culture in our environment, and all of our consultants believe this. And all of the people who lead all of our groups and facilitate
people that
things.
We're training up in LCMC.
And everyone in the school, you get to be in an environment that says it is normal to not be perfect.
Yep.
It is human to still be dysregulated. It is normal to still have misunderstandings.
Yes.
It's normal to have triggers come up when you get in conflict. It is normal, like breaking our rules that our goal is to be perfect, because then we can never do the transformation process. You can't transform. If your goal is to be perfect, you'll never allow yourself to be mush.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the
100%.
beauty is if you are in a culture where the peer pressure is saying you're loved and worthy when you're undone. You're loved and worthy when you haven't fixed it yet, which to me is what it's not like our culture. Like, it's not like we created that culture as a brand new concept. Like, that's the culture we really believe God is.
Yeah.
That there is a God who understands our humanity, who understands all of the pain and all the self-protectors we have and all of the ways we try to survive and negotiate the world. And he wants us to be liberated from the things that have kept us in hell on earth, and on earth, the things that are right now tormenting us. And he wants us to be able to go through the liberation process so that we can come alive and have peace and hope and joy and feel worthy of love. Like, I've never understood the power of forgiveness until I understood how messy I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I spent so long trying to be self-righteous and be perfect and do everything right. Like I remember I used to think there was a way to do conflict right. Like I really did believe that you can do all the steps right and it'll be perfect if you do it perfect. And I'm like, there's no way for any human to do it right because we all have these deep subconscious things that are going to show up to try to protect us. And even if we say things the way we think is right, but we have a slightly different energy, the other person might not understand it. Like conflict is so nuanced, and that doesn't make me hopeless.
Yeah.
About
Right.
because I'm like, no, I'm better at it now than I ever have been. It's easier now than it ever has been. And yet I'm always going to need grace
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I'm never going to be perfect. The more I allowed myself to be mush, the more I allowed myself to need God,
Yeah.
to need
Yes.
forgiveness. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never been so thankful for a God that wants to forgive every issue I have, that feels fully complete with the cross and loves to love me and that I don't have to prove or do anything. And so me allowing myself to be messy and loved here
Yes.
has enabled me to then actually love other people in their messy, because who am I to need it and receive it and not give that away?
Yeah.
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 That's really good. I have this saying where I say, perfect people don't need a perfect God, but imperfect people definitely need a perfect God.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when we put ourselves in that place of perfection and there's this right way, like you don't need God.
Yeah.
There is no need for God. You
Yeah,
are
it's good.
God within yourself. But when I embrace my weakness, like
Mhm.
Paul says, when I embrace my messiness, when I get to be human, then he gets to be God. And I'm
Mhm.
not supposed to be God. I'm supposed to be human. And
Yeah.
it's not an exception for, I'm just going to go out and be messy. It's saying, no, I embrace that I am messy because that actually helps me to partner with the fathering love of God in my life, which is transformative,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's love
good,
that,
Pete.
I mean, ultimately, we can all think we're going through a lot of process in every season because there's hard things in every season that we're trying to survive. The process that leads to freedom is the one that is leading towards love and regulation.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I was
And
going to sum it up, and safety. Yeah. And this is
Yeah.
why I love the pathway to freedom, because it really does help you start to understand your protectors and then have compassion for why your protectors show up so that you can build shame resilience, and then teaches you how to take ownership for what is going on in your life, which invites love in, and then teaches the journey to begin towards regulation and becoming whole. And
it brings rest into your life. It
Mhm.
brings a sense of grounding and rest
Yeah.
to who you are, you know,
Yeah.
which is so powerful.
and this is a good reminder for those of you who are really in the throes of doing the work, of facing your pain, of looking at the things you've ignored for years, of owning your mess and how messy that feels. There is another side. Like the other side isn't perfection. The other side for like Pietze and Jonny is the humility to embrace who they are as they are and to continue to become their more authentic selves. That's the other side. And it's easier now. It's so much easier now than it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think that can be so hard for people is how much awareness increases the pain.
Yeah.
When you become aware of what's going on under the surface, it's like the classic, if you've ever had a family member who's like got a freaking growth on their back or something and they refuse to go to the doctor, or they're like limping around and and you're like, just,
That's a real
it's
scenario
probably
that's
not a big thing. It's probably not a big thing, but just go to the doctor so we
Right.
can figure out what's going on. But the awareness oftentimes emotionally, I'm
Brings
aware
fear.
all the time now what's going on with me. And sometimes that's more painful
Yeah.
than it was before, but I think, one of the biggest pitfalls I see all of us get into on this journey of growth and transformation, one of the biggest costs is the 3 steps forward, 2 steps back
Yes.
kind of dynamic. I remember
This is
There-
transformation.
Yes. I remember Pietze and I had this amazing moment. We were on vacation. We were at an Airbnb. And I think we might have even told this story
Yeah,
last
you
year
did.
or 2 years ago. I'm not going to go into detail, but essentially, big fight. We were trying to work it through. It didn't work out. It started in the morning and it was like at this point, like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And we still hadn't worked through it. Finally, we worked through it. I wept about something that I had never been vulnerable about before. She met me in it. We got to this good place. We had amazing, mind-blowing sex. And in the context of all of this, the thing that was so beautiful was the feeling that we had gone back to where we were before all the brokenness entered. We felt like we were young again. We felt like we were connected again, like what we had envisioned our marriage to be again. 4 days later, we're not doing good again. Okay. However, the 2 steps backwards always feels way more scary when you have had a taste of the glory.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you have had a taste of the glory, all of a sudden, that night, that one night where you don't have anxiety, when you get to the next night and you have anxiety again,
you're back.
It feels way worse
I can't do this.
Than having been in a place where you just had accepted it and it is what it is, which I know is funny because we just did an episode about acceptance. But
this is the wrong kind of acceptance.
The wrong kind of acceptance where you feel like I'm going back. I'm going back to this thing and I've had a taste of the goodness. I remember my parents were a host home for people with disabilities for a long time. Cool. And they had this guy who had been in an institution as a child, right? Because we used to institutionalize people with disabilities. And at this point, this guy was like in his 70s, living with my folks. So it'd been like, 40, 50 years since he had been in any form of institution. Okay. He would still hide food.
Wow.
Yeah, so
because
sad.
his subconscious mind said you might not be provided for. Right. Even though he's living in this really comfortable home where food is always available. Okay. And what you see often when people have taken a course or seen a counselor for a little while, or maybe they've been in marriage counseling or something, and all of a sudden they have this really bad moment, you want to throw in the towel.
You want to say, like, none of it was worth it. This isn't even
pointless.
working. I'm doing a lot of work, but
defeat.
It's not even fixing anything.
Yeah.
Because your subconscious mind doesn't believe that it can get out, that it can actually find that again. And so you have to be giving yourself information. This is not a destination. This is a journey.
And this is part of the journey.
And the 3 steps forward will come again. I'm in the middle of the 2 steps backwards right now, but the 3 steps forward will come again.
And it's all upward motion. Even when I take 2 steps forward, I'm still further along than I was.
You actually
6
have to
months
give
ago.
I do this, and it's so simple and so practical, but I actually look at my life and look at how different it is. Look at how different my internal world is. Look at how much more at peace I am. Look at how much more connected with my kids are when I'm in the middle of the 2 steps back.
Yes.
I actually have to give my mind information. We are making progress.
Yes.
You have to take your head, you have to turn it around backwards, and you have to look at how far you've come.
Yes.
Even though it feels like you're moving backwards, you're looking and saying, no, I'm making progress here.
Well, and this is one of the hardest parts of marriage. It's been one of the hardest parts for me and Justin and for all the couples that we counsel, which is when you have a good experience and then you have a bad experience, that the process of you starting to thaw out in the good experiences where you're starting to like, oh, this could be a new normal or this could be great. And so what happens is couples will have a great connection point. And then when they have an old fight or an old trigger pattern show up, it sends them into this deep hopelessness, panic.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get to experience that thing that I wanted.
Yeah.
And so like with Justin, I would say there some of the things that have caused me the most pain, he's been radically transforming in the last couple of years. And so I'll see him transform. But then if he goes back to a behavior that was causing me pain, I no longer have my tolerance for that behavior anymore.
Well, it becomes higher stakes because now you tasted, I know what our relationship is like without this thing that has caused me a lot of pain. So then when it comes, it's like, I can't do this. I can't do it.
And your subconscious mind is always telling you, I cannot do that forever.
Yeah.
And the process of coming out of survival is, and it doesn't have to be in marriage. It could be like I talked about, like Courtney, like feeling regulated and then having anxiety again and then having panic. Oh, I can't, now that I've tasted that life could be better, I can't go back to this again. And I think that this is a real pain point for anyone on a transformation process. And this is where
Yes.
discouragement wants to stop you.
Hopelessness wants to
Yes.
set in.
Mhm.
Yep. It
Across
wants to
the
tell you
board.
it's not worth it.
Whether it's
Yeah.
you like trying to get out of a porn problem and like 3 times that week you caught your feelings and you recognized them, you dealt with them in a healthy way, and then one time you found yourself right back in it.
Yes.
Your brain will latch onto that one time and it will say, see, you're never going to overcome.
Yeah.
And so one
Yeah.
of the things that I have held on to in my whole life, if you don't quit, you win.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you
I
don't
love
quit,
that.
you win. Like,
I love that.
maybe it will take me 5 years to overcome this porn addiction. Maybe it will take me 5 years to be regulated when I'm PMSing. Like, maybe that's true. But again,
Yes.
if you let go of your timetable and you say, like, honestly, 5 years, I have 50 years after that
Yeah.
to live,
Yes.
possibly. And then that'd be worth it. It'd be worth
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
If
yeah.
I have to wrestle through anxiety to peace for 5 years, but I keep having just a little bit more percentage of peace, maybe I just have 1% more peace each month than I had before.
Yep.
But at the end of 5 years, I'm not in anxiety. I'm in peace. That 5-year journey is worth it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and basically what you're doing there is you're reparenting your little kid.
Yes.
Because what's happening
The
when you're
internal
in the
kid.
2 steps backward is your little kid is freaking out.
Yeah. And
It's like,
that's your
I can't
internal
go back.
kid
I can't
inside
go back. I
yourself.
can't go back. Right. It's like the guy who lived with my folks that's saying, like, his little kid is saying, I need to hide this food. I can't go back to that
Yes.
moment. Or when you're in your
Yes.
marriage and you're saying, I can't go back. And so you're reparenting yourself saying, no, you got this. Right. It's like a parent when their kid comes home from practice and they did an awful job and they got benched or whatever. And they're saying, hey, hang in there. You got this. If you don't quit, you win. I love that's such a beautiful
It's a
phrase.
beautiful phrase.
So good.
Speaking of parenting, one of the things that I got the most in the area of people feeling defeat were parents going on a transformation journey.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. And so you might get an example of a mom who's always
apologize.
who's always blowing up on her kids, and she begins to that begins to stop. She begins to humbly take ownership, stop exploding, starting to be able to manage her emotions. And then she might have a couple weeks of good stuff, and then she has a blow up and she's like, that's it. I'm just destroying my kids. I can't get out of this. I'm not making any progress.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because for parents, they're like, I'm destroying someone else's life, and the
Yeah.
high stakes goes to the ceiling. And
Yes.
those have been the people, especially, that I've had to sit down and be like, did you just have 2 weeks that were different than before? And they're like, yeah. I go, do you think that could be really relieving to those kids? Do you think that could start shaping and even showing your kids that there's grace to grow and develop and not have to be perfect as you're getting out of it? And I've watched as parents get so much relief in that concept and learning how to talk people through it. Like, hey, I am messy, and hey, mom is trying or dad is trying. And here's where he is making mistakes still, but I'm trying to find my way out of it. And you guys can try to find your way out of messiness that you have inside of your life.
Well, and that's what I love, Justin, about what you're saying, because everything that we teach around this is that you take your messy moments, you take the 2 steps back, and they actually work for you to become healing moments.
This is what pathway is.
This is what pathways is that even when you have those 2 step backs, even when you have the mess up, even when you have the messy moment, it's actually an opportunity right there. That thing right there is an opportunity not only for healing, but for love, connection, and in turn, transformation.
Yeah. Like in Pathways, we would teach how to if you make a mess again, then you learn to clean up and repair again. And that actually begins creating a new safety zone for your kids, a new ability to connect, a new ability to see the gift in it. It's a beautiful process, and it can keep us in humility, which can lead us towards connection. And just the logic of it, because what people want to do is like, I'm going to quit this transformation process because it's not working. And I'm like, so then you won't have the 2 good weeks at all. You'll just have the 3 good weeks.
Yes.
You'll just have 5 bad weeks. Like 3 weeks forward, 2 weeks back still means that you have, and that is what transformation is to me. It's like adding 1% more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Adding 1% more to, like, maybe in this conflict, like so I've been working on conflict for the last few years. I have a lot of trauma around it. And I have a lot of self-protectors around it. And so my goal isn't, did I do that conflict perfectly? I'm like, was I more connected to myself 1% more? Was I more regulated 1% more? Did I blame 1% less? That is how I judge success in a transformation process. Not, did I do all, because I know all of the steps to do right in conflict. I know them logically. Right. I can't get my body to not trigger though sometimes from my flashbacks. So what I have to do is, okay, but I narrated this time. That was really good. What is the one thing that I did do that 3 years ago I wouldn't have done?
Yep.
That 5 years ago I wouldn't have done? What is the building block? Even though I got really dysregulated at this point in the conflict, I actually got curious at this point in the conflict, and I've never done that before, or that used to not be a skill of mine a year ago, that is the way for my brain to to actively give a better perception of moving forward.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm thinking of when we're talking, even when you're sharing in that.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
The other thing is recognizing, like sometimes maybe I did the conflict just bad, but now I recognize where I got triggered. Now I recognize what was going on in my body. Yeah. Now I recognize what happened to me. Lots of people will shame themselves. They'll be like, see, I knew better, but I couldn't do it. And to me, I'm like, I have awareness that I used to never have.
Right.
I used to never know what was going on inside of me. I used to be reacting the whole time with my subconscious. And now, which pathway is all about learning to get your subconscious to your conscious. Like now I actually am seeing what was consciously going on. I may not have been able to fix everything yet, but the ability to recognize what was happening for the first time or for the 30th time, like this is a new skill. It normally takes me a couple of years to get a new skill fully to where it feels normal and natural.
One of the things that we're talking about here is the price to freedom is humility, but the payoff is grace. So what happens is like it feels excruciating to engage humility initially, and it opens us up to all kinds of stuff. But when Abby's even talking about even how she processes towards herself as she's engaging in the ownership and the honesty of what's happening inside of her, is this grace response with herself, and then there's an external grace that begins to happen. And most of us humans grow up in a cultural experience that lacks grace. And humility is a doorway to punishment for a lot of people. Like if I acknowledge the reality of this thing, then people are going to come down on me. Even as kids, sometimes if we told on ourselves, then we got more punishment. And so it can be real scary. But as adults, we have the power to cultivate an environment where humility gets praised with grace, where we get to cover ourselves in grace and choose to receive the grace that other people have for us. Because I know that when I engage in humility and ownership and just being like, hey, I don't have it all together, I'm messy. I have felt so many people so kindly and graciously be like, wow, like I love you, I see what your heart really is, Justin, inside of this. And
it actually endears people to you.
Absolutely. And what I could do is sit in resistance of grace, which a lot of people do because they believe that we're undeserving of grace. But when you begin to go like, no, actually grace is something that's freely given, and it's something that I need to learn how to freely receive. In my relationship with love, I've learned how to begin to embrace the grace that is being extended, the grace and mercy from people, from God, from circumstances, and go, no, I'm worthy of the grace. Not because I have it all together, but because that's the nature of God, that God wants this grace to hit us. It's this grace that heals us. It's his kindness that leads us to transformation. And it's learning how to receive the grace and the kindness that will really heal our hearts in the process. And all this to say, like, even that, like, as we're on our journey, all of us, and we have things like the Pathway to Freedom and LCMC, we have a culture like we're like doors wide open. Come participate with us. Come participate in creating a culture of grace and humility. And allowing yourself to disengage from the lie that you have to be perfect and engage with the truth that we're all imperfect people learning and growing inside of our process. And there's ample amounts of grace for that as we engage in a relationship with humility.
I love that. That's so good. And I think that it just speaks to the power of even doing it in community again.
Yeah.
You know, like Abby and I wouldn't be at the place that I don't think any of us, because we've developed now such a close bond, would be at the transformational place that we were without each other.
Yeah.
And I see that for the people that take the courses, the people that are in the school. I'm like, there's no way healing happens in community.
Yes.
There is actually, even on a scientific level, you can't heal by yourself. You have to heal with another, you know? And so I just think I'm like, it is the powerful thing. Like you try to do this on your own and it can feel really overwhelming. It can feel scary, but you do it in community and you have a support system of people rallying, saying like, no, you got this. Like, no, there is going to be the 3 steps forward again. Like, no, you're so safe. And celebrating your humility, celebrating your ownership, it actually propels you I actually think that it actually accelerates the healing process.
I've seen even in our LCMC students this year, because we really initiated like at the end of classes, like ownership time of like, hey, let's take ownership in this conversation. Where are things that you can identify that you've been messy inside of this? And I can see this explosion of freedom inside of people's hearts because they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to live in hiddenness anymore. I don't have to live under the weight of shame anymore. This is actually something that's celebrated in this culture, is to just be like, yeah, this is totally where I screwed things up. This is where I'm growing and developing. This is where I don't have it all together. And there's this breath of life when you have an environment like that.
And this is where we do our courses different. We do our school. So LCMC is our life consulting masterclass, and it is a year-long school. And we have a first year, second year, and a third year program. So you can do it for 3 years, or you can do it for 1 or 2. I guess you can choose how many you want to do it for.
10 months duration each of those years.
But the concept is we have every one of our consultants go through their own emotional health transformation. Because when you've gone through your own, it's easy for you to cheer other people on when you see them in theirs.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
all of our consultants that work for us have been mush. They've been in the cocoon. They've been mush.
Right.
And so they know what it feels like when you're in mush.
Yes.
So they can actually see you and cheer you on. And we don't train, like lots of coaching training programs train like logic where you learn information. We train.
And you learn skills.
Then you learn skills. We train, you got to go on an experience of the healing journey, because if you've actively experienced the healing journey, and this is where like Pietze and Jonny became great life consultants. Why? Because they went through their own healing journey. So they can call out and recognize what is going on when people are in it. They can be like, oh, I remember being there, and this, let me tell you what helps. And this is how this feels. And so that's why like we have a school to actually help people learn to embrace. It is a lot of work to learn to embrace yourself when you're messy.
It is.
It's counterintuitive to what we've learned. Most of us are trying to get loved by being perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it's a process of deprogramming and finding your most authentic self. But when you have the peer pressure of a group that is not peer pressuring you to be an image or to look a certain way or to act perfect like most groups do, this is the peer pressure of you're loved and welcomed as messy as you are.
Yes.
You don't have to pretend anymore. You can be human here. When you're human, you belong.
Yes.
Like there's a belonging based on being human, not a belonging based on behavior performance. So I
will say, like, as you go on your emotional health journey, one of the best ways that you can break the lies from your past is in how you go about your journey.
Yes.
Right? Because having grace on yourself in the journey, the very thing we're talking about right now, where you're looking back and you're saying, oh, I did a really bad job in emotional health this week. I didn't do, like if you're doing a course, if you're going on the journey out there somewhere and you're in the middle of a moment where you feel like, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
You need to ask yourself, am I agreeing with the voice of my parents or the voice of shame or the voice of judgment towards the journey, the very journey that's trying to break me out of this?
Yes.
Because one of the best things you can do is to decide that you're not going to be hard on yourself while you're going on the journey.
Yes.
That you're actually going to be the biggest cheerleader,
Mhm.
the biggest fan of your own journey, rather than being the voice of your mom or
Yep.
the voice of your dad or the leader or the teacher or whoever it was.
Or the
Yep.
coach. Yeah.
You're going to do the opposite of that and cheer yourself on as you go on the journey.
Yeah.
That's so good. You guys, as we wrap this up, I just want to say we've been having people, and I said this before in another podcast, but we've been having people actually gather groups together to listen to these podcasts and share in these conversations. I think
Or like they listen on their own and then they meet
get together
and talk
and they
about
process it
Mhm.
weekly. I think a podcast like today's episode is one that is really a very powerful one to gather a group of people, whether it's family or friends, either listen it together or apart from each other, and come dialogue about this, because this is about restructuring a culture and restructuring the culture that we relate around and creating a place of acceptance for our imperfections and cultivating grace and understanding and humility. Like these types of conversations have the power to restore relationships, create deep tethered bonds and safety with each other as we start getting these types of conversations on the table. And go ahead.
And some of you are like, I don't know how to find people that are open to me being messy. And part of that is creating conversations around something like this, where you can start to introduce the idea. Like we're trying, the whole Connected Life podcast is trying to create a global community of people that can feel like they belong in their journey.
Yeah.
So
Sign up for the Pathway to Freedom, though. Can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
That one. Blah, blah, blah.
you
Immersion
can apply
program.
for Life Consulting Masterclass. All that's at Justin and Abi. That's abi.com.
And we're like on a time. You gotta do it
you
now.
gotta hurry up. There's a
You
time
got to do it
crunch
now. And we
starting to
only run
happen.
it once a year.
Yes, we do.
Yes. And rate, review, subscribe, and share. Go write your reviews for us if you've gotten touched by this, and share this. Share to people. They need to get connected to this type of information. So, hey, love you all.
Love you guys.
I'm done. I'm going away. Bye.
Okay. Bye.